Hi everyone, it's me, Arielle, and it's Wednesday Warriors. And this week I'm going to be talking about recovery messages. To start off, I want to talk about recovery messages that I think people get a lot, and certainly ones that I came across when I was in my recovery process. I think a lot of the time, as I'm sure many of you know, there's a huge stigma around mental illness in general, and definitely a stigma around eating disorders and people who have eating disorders. I know a lot of the time I was labeled an anorexic, and I'm not an anorexic. I'm Arielle, and I happen to have anorexia. But I think it's something that a lot of people probably experience. They're labeled bulimic. And even though they may have bulimia nervosa, or they may have anorexia nervosa, or they may have EDNOS, eating disorder not otherwise specified, or they may have binge eating disorder, um, it doesn't mean that that is all they are. It doesn't mean that that is now their trademark and that is their claim to fame and they are nothing else. It doesn't mean that that is their identity. And even though I think many mental health professionals steer away from doing that, sometimes inadvertently they do it and they might not even know that they are. And I think it plays a big part in someone feeling that their eating disorder is the biggest part of their life, because it doesn't have to be. I think that naming your disorder can be very helpful in a lot of instances, but it's really not about the disorder itself, and it's really not about the criteria, and it's really not completely about what made you you and what made you the way that you are, or what made you develop your mental illness. It's about recovering from it and what you're going to do to make your life better and to move on from this point. Now, it's of course very beneficial to discover the root and figure out why things may have started, or why you have used an eating disorder as a coping mechanism, or certainly things that played a part in your development of the disorder. But it shouldn't be your sole focus, and it shouldn't be about that. I think recovery is not a word that's used enough when someone is in recovery from an eating disorder. We talk about our eating disorder doing this and our eating disorder doing that, and we developed the eating disorder because of this, and this made us do this, which then made us turn to the eating disorder. And all those things have their place, and all those things are necessary as part of the moving on. But I think sometimes the word recovery and even the word hope, they just aren't part of the vocabulary when someone who is struggling is either going for treatment or seeing a professional, or just listening to things about eating disorders on television. So a recovery message that I seemed to get, even if it wasn't spelled out for me, was that real recovery only happened for a few people. And if you recovered, you were one of the lucky ones. And I know that to this day it still seems that way, especially the way the media portrays things, and because of the huge stigma that still surrounds mental illness. But I don't think it's true. I think a lot of people do recover from eating disorders, and I think they lead very beautiful, healthy lives. I do think recovery means different things for different people. I think the word recovered, sometimes people struggle with that word. They want to steer clear of it, maybe for superstitious reasons, partly just because they feel like if they label themselves recovered, somehow along the line, years from now, it'll backfire on them and they won't be recovered anymore. Sometimes it's just about, I guess, maybe people feeling like they're tooting their own horn. They don't want to call themselves recovered if they're jumping the gun. Other times, recovery and recovered are synonymous to a person. So I don't think the definition is as important as the life that you're living, and if you're living healthfully and you're living happily. And that you're free of the eating disorder. Recovery is really being free of the eating disorder. So that's what I'm trying to say when I'm talking about recovery, because I think that's the most basic and general definition that I can give that encompasses everyone's definition. But as I was saying, there are so many people that have recovered from their eating disorders. I know many, many people, personally, professionally, on the eating disorder activist network that I am lucky enough to be a part of who are recovered individuals. And they are lucky to have recovered, and they definitely are lucky to have beat the illness and regained control of their lives, just as I feel that I am lucky to have recovered and gained control of my life again. But at the same time, they're not the precious few, they're not the select chosen ones. Anyone can do this. Anyone can recover from their eating disorder. You can recover from your eating disorder. And you have to believe that it's possible, and you have to know that it's possible. I'm telling you that it's possible, certainly, and I hope that's what I, one, embody, and two, explain, and three, give hope for every time I make a video for you. Recovery isn't just some beautiful word that I talk about and I pretend exists, or I relate to my own life and show you how great it is and let you know that you can achieve it, but you have to work really hard. I'm talking about something that actually exists, and I know that in dealing with mental illness, and when people examine themselves and struggle with their own mental illness, especially when an eating disorder co-occurs with another kind of mental health issue, there's just sort of a sense of defeat, like, well, I have this now, so there's no hope for me, or I have this, so I'm diagnosed for life, and that'll be why I am the way I am. It's not meant to be an excuse, and it's not meant to be a label. And I know certainly sometimes it is a label, and it's really hard to get away from, but don't label yourself. Of all people, you should not label yourself. When I think about you, when I think about all the people that are out there watching these videos that I make, I don't think about all these bulimics or all these anorexics or all these other eating disordered individuals that are out there watching these videos. I don't think, hey, I'm making these videos for a bunch of eating disordered people. I think about making these videos for a bunch of teenagers or a bunch of college students or a bunch of women like myself, a bunch of women who are older than me, younger than me, my same age, my peers, my colleagues. I think about making these videos for people who just want a little motivational speaking, a little bit of advice, a little bit of encouragement, whether or not they even have an eating disorder. A lot of us might share something in common, that we have an eating disorder or have had an eating disorder in our lives, but it isn't what defines us. It's certainly not what defines me. It isn't even part of my character. It isn't even part of my personality. It was something that I dealt with. I am a person, and I had anorexia. Anorexia didn't have me. I was not an anorexic. It's a very fine line. It might sound like the same thing when I talk about all those things together, but it really isn't. And I think it's important to keep in mind that you are you, and you just have something, and you can beat it. I personally will not stop fighting for positive recovery messages to get out there in the world, to reach people, to show them what's really important, let them know that they're not alone, and to encourage them on recovery, because positive recovery messages are really important, especially in contrast with all of the negative things that are out there. Take care of yourselves. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.